Hello. I'm going to be reading from Paper Wishes again, and this time I'm going to be reading the chapter called June. And if you remember, in the end of May, Ron had just come to visit the family and stay with them. He had been in college, and so at the very end, she remembers that she had sent a message to Ron, and the message had just said, "Please come." It didn't say, "Please come and take me from this place," or "Please come and take me from this place to find Eugen," or "Please come and take me from this place to find Eugen and return to the island," all things she really wished for. It had just said, "Please come." And so now, interestingly enough, she feels like it's her fault that Eugen is alone. It's her fault that grandfather has stopped laughing. And maybe it's even her fault that Ron is with them, not in college, in this prison camp. So here we start with June. Ron and Mother and I eat breakfast together at the mess hall. "School," Mom reminds me. Ron looks happy. He has work too. He will teach the older children. "I must hurry," Ron tells me, "so I won't be able to walk you to school today, okay?" Ron does not look at me while he waits for my response, but Mother does. I nod and Mother says, "Okay," at the same time. "School is a good place to talk," Ron says. I look at my plate. "Give her time," Mother says softly. Does she think I cannot hear her? Ron pats my arm. "Talk when you're ready," he says, "but school is a good place." After breakfast, Mother tells me to change into my best dress before we go to school. There are many students and parents at Block 7. Most, but not all, students have Japanese faces like mine. Signs with grade levels are posted on the buildings. Adults stand near the signs. Adults who are not soldiers or policemen, but teachers. Many of these adults also have Japanese faces like mine. There is one adult who watches with unfriendly eyes. "He is the warden," Mother whispers to me. "He's in charge of everyone." Mother finds the sign that says grades 4, 5, and 6, and we get in line. I am happy to see that Ron's classroom is in this barracks too. He is standing near a sign that says grades 7, 8, and 9. 3 other teachers stand near this barracks, and lines have formed in front of each teacher. The high school students are in another barracks, so are the younger children. Finally, I am at the front of my line, and Mother presents me to the teacher. This teacher has a kind face. Her blonde hair is twisted around her head. She reaches her hands towards me and smiles. I touch her hand for a second. I know that I should tell her my name. "Manami," Mother says for me. Then Mother leans close to me. There is a frown on her forehead. Her eyes are sad. "All will be well," she tells me. Then she leaves. You know, the author telling me that Mother has got a frown on her forehead and sad eyes tells me that even though Mother is leaving, she's telling Manami everything is going to be fine. She also feels what? What do you think? Yeah, I think so. A little bit worried. A little bit worried, maybe. A little sad for Manami, a little worried. I go inside with the teacher and the other students. This schoolroom looks like my family's room in Barracks 8. Just the furniture is different. But in this schoolroom, there are no desks, only long benches and one table with a chair. The teacher tells us to sit down, and I am glad that Kimi has saved the spot next to her for me. "Just like the island," Kimi says. I look out the window. If it is just like the island, I would smell salt and fish. I would feel a breeze. Eugen and grandfather would have walked me to school. Mrs. Brown would be standing in the front of the room. It is not just like the island. Isn't this interesting? Kimi is noticing the things that are like the island to help her feel better. Manami, on the other hand, hasn't been able to make that adjustment yet. She's noticing all the things that aren't like the island, and so as a result, is not really feeling better. The teacher writes her name on a large piece of white butcher paper tacked to the wall. Miss Rosalie. I hear my classmates repeat her name. It is beautiful. It reminds me of ocean waves rolling up and down. Miss Rosalie passes a book around and asks us to read it to her. When Kimi hands me the book, she whispers, "Read, Manami." I like the words about seeds and trees. "Can you read this?" Miss Rosalie asked me. "Of course I can read it. I just read it." "Manami?" Miss Rosalie asks again. "Manami does not speak," Kimi says. "She cannot speak?" Miss Rosalie asks. "Not since we came here," Kimi says. Miss Rosalie hands me a slate and a piece of chalk. A slate is like a blackboard, chalkboard. So they come, like, you know how our whiteboards are smaller and then we can write on them? The same is true. You can also get small chalkboards and write on them with chalk. "Can you write?" I take the chalk and slate. I draw her name, curling like waves. I draw 2 eyes and a sharp nose and pointed ears. "Yujin," Kimi says. Miss Rosalie passes the book to the next student, and I set my chalk and slate on the bench beside me. Later, when the other students go out for recess, Miss Rosalie keeps me inside. "I would like to be your friend, Manami," she tells me. "I wonder what you are thinking." She points towards the administration buildings. "I live that way," she says. I know the doctor also lives there with his family and other workers from the outside too, but the soldiers who are stationed along the barbed wire fence and in the guard towers live outside the camp. The workers' block is like our block, with fathers and mothers and children and gardens, but it is also different from our block. The children in that block do not have to stay inside a wire fence. They can leave to go shopping or see a movie. Some of those children go to our school, but the older high school children do not. They go on a bus to a different school. If they wanted to, they could also follow the road to the ocean and get on a ferry and follow the ocean to the island. For the rest of the morning, I think about this, about the other children who can go outside the fence, the other children who do not have their dogs taken away from them. When school is dismissed at lunchtime, my classmates laugh and chatter and say goodbye to the teacher. The boys are in a rush to leave and they jostle me on the way out. Kimi gives me a hug goodbye, just like on the island. At the door, Miss Rosalie holds out some paper and a pencil to me. I look down because I feel too shy to take her gift. Her hand opens mine and places the paper and pencil in it. That night, I take a piece of paper and prop it up on my cot. It leans against the wall. I consider drawing Miss Rosalie's name again, or drawing ocean waves again, or Yujin's face. Before I sleep, I put the paper and pencil under the mattress of my cot. Perhaps I will draw tomorrow. This is how school goes each day. Students sit quietly. Miss Rosalie passes a book around. Students read from the book slides past me into the next pair of waiting hands. Miss Rosalie writes new words on a big piece of paper and we practice spelling them, taking turns to write the new words over and over on the slates we share. And Miss Rosalie says she will bring more when she can. We have recess, then we work on numbers. Miss Rosalie separates us into small groups, one group in each corner of the classroom. We sit on the floor and she gives us math problems to solve on our slates. Adding, subtracting, multiplying, dividing. She makes her way from group to group. Each day, more and more students come to classes. Rio counts the students for Miss Rosalie. The first day, there are 21 students. After a week, the number is 35. This room is crowded with bodies on benches. All of the rooms are crowded with bodies on benches. It is hard for so many bodies to keep still, but we do. For a few hours between breakfast and lunch, Miss Rosalie teaches. When we hear the clang that announces lunch, classes are over. Miss Rosalie stands near the doorway as students hurry to lunch lines. I stay at the back, always the last to leave. Each day at the door, she gives me paper. Then I peek inside Ron's room, which is next to Miss Rosalie's, until he waves and tells me that he will see me at dinner. I have started to draw on Miss Rosalie's papers at home when I sit with Grandfather, and when each drawing is done, I put it under my mattress with a blank paper. I decide to give Miss Rosalie a gift. I rise earlier than usual. Ron and Father are not home. They must have gone to the showers. Grandfather rises earlier than anyone else, and I can tell by his wet hair that he has already been to the showers this morning. So that tells me they don't have a bathroom inside their house, inside their room. They don't even have really a house. They just have a room, no bathroom there. So they have to go to another building to take showers, brush their teeth, wash their face. Mother watches as I look through my pictures to find one for Rosalie. When I find the one I like, I write Miss Rosalie's name on it. For your teacher? Mother asks. This is a good choice. I want to give it to her this morning before breakfast, before the other children arrive. With my picture in my hand, I run to Block 7 and climb the stairs to the barracks where Miss Rosalie's classroom is. I don't see or hear anyone. Maybe Miss Rosalie is not there yet. I wonder if I should knock on the door. Before I decide, the door opens. Good morning, Miss Rosalie says. I give her the folded paper. Miss Rosalie unfolds it. Father's fishing boat, close to shore. I wondered what you might draw, she says. It is still early enough to be very quiet. There is a little wind to blow dust. Is this where you lived? She asks. It's beautiful. On the walk back to Mother, I think about which picture I will give Miss Rosalie next. I love this relationship that is developing between her teacher and Manami. Just a very quiet way that Miss Rosalie is trying to connect through drawing with Manami, letting her know that she's interested and cares. Manami, Mother calls one morning, come outside, rain is coming. It is still mostly dark. The mostly dark times of the day are when Mother works in her garden. When I reach her, I squat on the ground, careful of the scraggly roots that have begun to thicken into stems. Mother is right. There's a new smell in the air. It is fresh and clingy and wet. Not the salty wet of the island air, not the rusty wet of the water pump. This wet is green and sharp. This wet clears the dust from my eyes and nose. This wet is the wet of rain. Mother is not the only one who tends a garden. Scattered around Block 3, I see others squatting along rows and mounds of struggling herbs and vegetables. It is dim, but I can see chins jutting out, lifting faces to the sky. We all wait for the rain to come. The sky lightens and still we squat, still we wait. A cloud clang breaks the stillness, calling us to the mess hall. Ron stands in the doorway of our building. Breakfast, he says. I look at Mother. Her face is still turned toward the sky. I pick up a bowl to fill with water at the pump before we go to eat. Not today, she says. Rain is coming. Ron and I wait with Mother for a few minutes, but then we go to the mess hall alone. Father has gone ahead and Grandfather stays in our room. After breakfast, Ron is silent on our way to school. In his silence, there is a big space that I fill up with more wet smells. I remember the itchy wet smell of sand sticking to my skin. I remember the sticky wet smell of fog. I remember the furry wet smell of Eugen. I breathe this smell into my body. I almost feel our noses pressed together, my arms wrapped around him, his tongue licking my cheek. I am happy when you smile, Ron says. And with his words, I cannot feel Eugen in my arms anymore. I will be even happier when I hear your voice, Ron says. I look at the ground and nod. I do not want Ron to see that my smile is gone now, just like my voice. See you after class, he says when we get to school. Ron does not force my chin up to see my eyes like Mother does. Ron does not bend down to see my eyes like Miss Rosalie does. Ron does not pick me up to see my eyes like Father does. Ron does not wait and stare at me until my eyes look back up like Grandfather does. Ron pats my shoulder when I nod. It is enough for him. Isn't this interesting? There's something about that eye contact. Miss Rosalie getting down on her level. Grandfather waiting until she lifts her chin up and they can look in the eyes. Father picking her up so that they're eye to eye. Mother lifting her chin up. There's something about that eye contact, I think, that's more special, where you're getting a deeper contact with someone. Think about when you're interacting with people in your home. Sometimes mom is saying something and you don't look, or she doesn't look at you and you respond. But when you really look at somebody, you're looking at your brother or sister, you're looking at your dad, there's a deeper connection there. So this doesn't mean that Ron is mad. It just means that he doesn't need that kind of connection like the other people in Manami's life. Maybe it's kind of the way brothers and sisters are. Before classes begin, all of the students and teachers line up in front of the flagpole in the schoolyard. It is new, but we knew it was coming. We have been practicing for it. Mr. Warden raises the flag. "Salute!" he booms. I place my hand on my chest, just like on the island, just like Miss Rosalie had us practice. "Pledge!" he booms. Voices drone on. So in other words, I think they're saying the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag. "Girl," Mr. Warden booms, "pledge!" Mr. Warden points long fingers at me. My heart races. Kimi pinches my arms. "Pledge, Manami," she says. Mr. Warden takes heavy steps toward me. I have a hard time catching my breath. "Manami," Ron says. "Have they forgotten about the dust coating my throat?" "She cannot speak, sir," Miss Rosalie says. "She cannot speak." Mr. Warden stares at me for a moment before stomping back to the flagpole. When the pledge begins again, I feel Miss Rosalie's arms around my shoulders. She pulls me to her, and I close my eyes. Mr. Warden plays a song over the loudspeaker. I listen to words about freedom and liberty, and my heartbeat slows down. On the island, I thought I understood these words and this song, but now I am not sure. Why do you think? Why would she not understand the words of freedom and liberty now? What's changed? When the song is finished and Mr. Warden has left, everyone goes into their classrooms. "Inside, children," Miss Rosalie says. She pulls me along with her. She stands in front of the class while we find our seats. As I read, think about changes in nature as spring turns into summer, she says. You may use a slate to draw if you'd like. When the slate basket passes down my row, I take a slate and a piece of chalk. It is not normal for our classroom to be so silent. A slate bangs to the floor and many children jump. If Mother were here, she would say, "All is well." Miss Rosalie does not say all is well. She reads poems about spring and summer and honeybees and budding flowers. My hand flits over my slate, dipping and bobbing and scratching and resting, chalk feathers from one line to another, circling and looping until I am finished. "Beautiful," Miss Rosalie says when she picks up my slate. She bends down to look into my eyes. This is how I picture the seasons changing too. The school day ends and the rain has not come, but I can still smell the promise of it. On the island, rain is not an all-day promise in the air. Rain comes, rain goes. Sometimes rain pounds hard and heavy, and sometimes rain mists soft and gentle, but it doesn't hover and wait, holding itself just out of reach. Before I leave school, I go to Ron's classroom. I have more paper from Miss Rosalie in my hand. He is speaking to 3 wild boys who are his students. They are older than me and scare me. I cannot hear Ron's words, but I can see his frown. What do you think that means? He is maybe just asking them to behave better. When he sees me in the doorway, he motions me forward. "Come in, Manami," he says. His frown changes to a smile. The wild boys leave. "May I see your picture?" Ron asks. I hand him a blank piece of paper. He says. He turns the paper one way and then another. "Perhaps," he says. He turns the paper to the other side. "Oh, yes, I see it now." I hear quiet laughter from behind me, and I turn to look. Miss Rosalie stands in the doorway, and she's laughing because there's no picture there. He's just playing with Manami. "I'm sorry to interrupt," she says, turning to go. "Oh, please come in," Ron says. Ron hands the paper to me. Then he stands behind me and puts his hands on both of my shoulders. "Thank you, Miss Rosalie," he says. "Thank you for speaking up for Minami this morning." Miss Rosalie's face turns red like she's embarrassed. "You're welcome," she says. Ron turns me around. I must prepare lessons for tomorrow. On my walk from school to home, I see the Wild Boys huddled against the wall of a building in Block 9. Kimi waves to me from a group of girls lined up in front of the mess hall in our block. Before I eat lunch, I check on Grandfather. He sits on a chair near the door. I sit on the ground next to him and take his hand in mine. Grandfather's hands are large and thin. They are soft and hard all at once. I squeeze his hand and then he squeezes back. I press his hand against my cheek and then squeeze it one more time before I go to the mess hall. Mother will worry if I'm late. I am not hungry, but I fill my plate with food and I will take it to Grandfather. When Mother comes out of the kitchen and sees that I am alone, she says, "Go sit with the other children." "When you are done, you can take something to Grandfather." I do as she says and sit with the other children, but as soon as she goes inside the kitchen, I pick up my plate and hurry back to Grandfather. After he finishes eating, I draw pictures on Miss Rosalie's paper for him. Once I drew Yujin, but Grandfather would not look. Now I draw the ocean, waves, sand, shells. Grandfather looks, but he does not smile. I drew footprints in wet sand, Grandfather's large, firm footprints followed by my smaller, bare feet. But my picture is not right, not yet. I smear some sand here, smear other sand here. Yujin is there too. I hold the picture up to Grandfather's face. His eyes are closed. I take out a new piece of paper and draw Mother's garden. I am so busy with my pictures that I don't realize it's time for dinner until Ron comes inside. I look up when he calls my name. While I stack my papers and pencil, I hear the clanging call from the mess hall. The mess hall line is long. After we fill our plates, Mother motions for us to sit at a table where there is just enough space for us at the end of a bench. Ron and I are careful to arrive early for dinner so that we can eat with Mother. She has a short break to eat with us. Mother goes to the kitchen and brings 3 cups and a steaming teapot. She is saving the last of our tea, so we drink hot water every evening with our dinner. Some people still have tea to drink, but most do not. Many do not drink hot water either, but Mother brings her teapot out every night. Before we have time to take even one bite or sip, a flash lights up the sky, followed by a crash. "Oh, finally the rain," Mother says. She grabs my hand and drags me to the door. Ron follows and others crowd behind us. And then the rain comes. Mother pulls us outside. She holds my hands, spinning us around and around, and others join in our rain dance. The yard in front of the mess hall is a muddy swirl of people. The rain does not drip or drop. The rain pours like the water pump, like the showers. Why do you think everybody is dancing in the rain? I'm wondering if it's just the hope of rain brings good things to their garden. Maybe flowers and plants will bloom. It'll take some of that dusty, dry air and make it fresh and clean. Maybe they miss the rain because remember they grew up in this area where they're used to a lot of rain. It pours until the laughing faces and twirling feet stop their happy dance. It pours until Mother begins to frown. "Hurry, children," she said. "We must save my plants." We run to Mother's garden. The water pours so fast that there is already a pond forming in the yard. Mother touches her battered plants one by one. The pouring rain has pounded them to the ground. Fragile stems are broken and tiny leaves float free. Mother kneels and pulls me to her, wrapping her arms around my waist. She cries into my stomach, and still the rain pours. Ron joins Mother on the ground, and then, as quick as it started, the rain stops. "We will save them," Ron promises Mother. "They cannot be saved," Mother says. "Well, we will try," Ron promises again. He helps Mother stand and leads her back to the mess hall. "What is this place?" I hear her say. I stay behind, touching the cilantro plant at my feet. Its stem is thinner than my little finger and longer than my forearm, but it lies flat against the ground. I lift it, but it falls. I prop it with 2 stones, but it's not enough. I dig into the mud with my fingers, searching for more stones. I have barely scraped the top layer of mud away when I see that the dirt beneath is not wet. It is hard and dry. All that pouring, and still I will have to bring water for the pump for the thirsty plants. I don't know if you've ever noticed that sometimes when it just mists here, I can see that the ground top layer is wet, but underneath is still actually kind of dry. And when you think about it, this ground is so dry that when the rain comes, it can't soak in. That ground is packed tight, and the rain just stays on the top, and then it just forms these big puddles rather than soaking down. If it rains all the time, then the ground can soak things up. Like here in Seattle, the ground soaks up the rain. And so even if it rains hard, there's usually not that much flooding because the ground is able to soak it in. Where I lived in Illinois, sometimes the ground would be hard and it would be dry. And so a lot of rain all at once would mean that things would flood. So this is what this place is like. It rains hard and fast, but the ground cannot take it in, and so it just becomes puddles. I pry 2 more stones from the hard dirt. I fill a bowl of water at the pump and pour it at the base of the plant. And now I wonder, what is this place? It's just so different, that's what they mean from Bainbridge. I look around Mother's garden. There are more plants to save. I make a promise. This garden will not die. Ron finds me in the garden, my hands thick with mud. "There you are," he says. "Come on, you need to eat dinner, then I'll help you with this." Later that week, we are all surprised when Father joins us for dinner. Mother and Ron and I are sitting down when Father enters the mess hall. Ron apologizes for our having already started to eat. I scoot down the bench to make room. Mother pours steaming water into her cup and sets it in front of Father. Father does not have a plate. "Would you like me to get you some food?" Mother asks. "I'll eat in a minute," he says. Father rests his hand on his chest, and then he pulls an envelope from inside his shirt. "A letter from Keiko," he says, handing it to Mother. Mother reads slowly. "No," she says, and passes it to Ron. Ron reads slowly. "Father," he says, "I cannot." "This will prove that you are American," Father says. "Why must I prove it?" Ron asks. "I know what is in my head and in my heart." Father and Ron stare at each other. Many others at our table stare too. When they see that I notice their stares, they look away, and Father leaves the mess hall. He does not eat rice and chicken with us. He does not drink his hot water. "Mother," Ron says. "I understand," she says. "I do not wish it either. I am curious, but I can be patient." Curious about, what's in the letter? It's interesting, in our culture, you would always ask your parents, "Hey, tell me, let me see the letter, let me read it." But in her culture, notice that even though she's American, they still have maybe a different culture where children wait to be told instead of demanding to be told. After we eat, Mother returns to the kitchen to finish her work shift. "Keiko suggests I join the army," Ron whispers. "There are rumors that soon the army will welcome those of us who are living here. Keiko says that if I join the army, I will be free to leave this place. But what kind of freedom is that? Should I fight for the army that imprisons my family?" It is like old time. Ron tells me what Mother and Father do not want me to hear. Ron hands me a slip of paper. "This is for you," he says. "Dear sister," it reads, "I know you are a comfort to Mother. Study and learn so that one day you can live with me and go to college. Keiko." Once I wanted to live with Keiko and go to college. Now I just want to go back. to the island. That is the end of the chapter June, and you can look by this video for some questions to answer.